Hey there, it's Shauna. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for July 9th. This week is all about playing with light and shadow because this week we have a new moon solar eclipse, and that is a time where there can be a lot of change, a lot of momentum, and especially around acknowledging the parts of yourself that you're aware of, the light, and then the parts of yourself that maybe you weren't consciously aware of or that were kind of running in the background, which is the shadow. So as always, I'm excited to share the astrology of this week with you, and then I have 3 tips for you to make the most out of this energy. So first things first, before that solar eclipse, we have Jupiter stationing direct. And so Jupiter is the planet that symbolizes luck and optimism, but also our ability to expand, to grow through new experiences, to be inclusive. And it also is related very much to social justice. So Jupiter has been retrograde since March this year, since March 2018. And so it's stationing direct in the sign of Scorpio. It's been there since fall last year. And so this is a time where it's not like a Mercury retrograde where you're going to notice something very quick happening, but it is a shift of energy. So whereas Jupiter has been inward, appearing to move backwards in the sky from March to now, when it stations direct, that means that the planet starts to appear to be moving forward again in the zodiac. So that could look like taking more action towards Jupiterian kind of things, things like social justice or activism, or moving forward with activities that expand your sense of self, that expand the way that you look at things, even getting more into philosophical kind of things. And this is going to be more present, most present for people who have personal planets in a fixed sign. So if you have personal planets in Taurus or Scorpio, or Aquarius or Leo, this is going to be more influential for you. At the same time, Jupiter will also square Mercury. So I feel like it's going to be this where something kind of clicks into place mentally, where you're like, oh, I know the thing that I need to do. And you might get a really big idea that's very Mercury, Jupiter, and then it will take time over the next few months to implement that big idea, that big shift in consciousness to get a little ethereal with you. So that's happening earlier in the week, and then we have the new moon solar eclipse. So this is exact on Thursday, the 12th of July at 7:48 p.m. Pacific time, and it's exact at 20 degrees of Cancer. So an eclipse is basically a time where the light of the sun or the moon gets blocked out. And so we can look at this in a symbolic way. In this case, it's the light of the sun that is being blocked out by the eclipse. Or it's being blocked out by the shadow of the moon. And so we can look at this as the sense of self, the ego, the identity, the sun, is being temporarily, briefly covered by the shadow of the moon, which is emotions and feelings and this sense of gut intuition as well. So I would really notice how you're feeling. When there's an eclipse, we can call everything into question. That can happen. It can feel like things are unstable. It can feel like things are changing. It can also feel like something that's old or worn out is falling away. There are things that are happening where you're able to process and release things very rapidly. And then at the same time, sometimes new things are coming in as well. New opportunities, little seedlings of new things. And so the other thing with eclipses is they're very unpredictable. So it's hard to tell, even looking at your birth chart, if there's going to be something very dramatic that happens now, or if it's something that maybe very subtly starts and then continues to grow over time. So the best thing that you can do in order to really work with this is to stabilize yourself, to ground yourself, and to notice how it is that you're feeling. If you feel called towards something, towards an activity or an interest or an action, you feel called to do something, I want you to follow that, because that's important at this time. If you feel like a sense of hesitancy around something, I would notice that too, because that's like a lot of information for you to maybe redirect yourself in some way. The other piece about this eclipse is that it's also exactly opposite Pluto. Pluto is about power, it's about deep emotions, and it's about like your ability to have power and control over yourself so that you can have an influence over others. And it can also symbolize where you feel like someone else is trying to exert their power over you. And so I'd watch for this too, like how are you using your power? How are you taking that inner sense of authority for yourself? And also, like, how do you use your intuition and your spidey senses? Like when you have those gut feelings, what do you do with that? That's all Pluto stuff too. And then the last thing that's happening this week, or kind of like towards the end of the week in conjunction with the eclipse, is we have Venus making a trine to Uranus and then Saturn. And so this is more subtle energy because it's a trine. So trines, we typically don't feel them as intensely because they're quote unquote easy. When there's a square or an opposition, like we're typically confronted with that kind of energy. But I wanted to mention this because it is an Earth trine, so it's Venus in Virgo, Uranus in Taurus, and then Saturn in Capricorn. So we have this like triangle of Earth energy connecting. So I'm wondering if this may stabilize things so that this eclipse in particular feels more stable than it normally would. And Venus is about socializing and connection and attraction. It's about beauty. Venus in Virgo in particular is more of like a practical way of doing things. It has a healer kind of energy. Again, like very practical, but there's a certain sense of like renewal that can come when we have Venus in the sign of Virgo. And so when it's connecting with Uranus and then Saturn, like there's something here where maybe you can take advantage of an opportunity and connect with people who can help you towards a long-term goal. Like those are themes that come up with this. So so I'd really pay attention to like the people that you're connecting with, the opportunities that are presented to you. And Venus-Uranus says like yes, say yes to things. And then Venus-Saturn says, okay, what is it that you're building? What are you committing to? And very beautiful energy combination for this week. So I have some tips for you. Tip number 1 is to release and purge this week, especially like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday leading up to that new moon eclipse. And so this is because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're in the dark phase of the moon. So it's this time of releasing and making space for the new. It's like preparing your space. But also because we have Pluto in there, we have the sun opposite Pluto with this new moon eclipse. Pluto symbolizes a time when it's beneficial to purge things, when it's beneficial to release. And you can do this physically, you can do this in your home or your workspace, you can do it through journaling, you can do it through talking to someone, any way that works for you. But I want you to have this mindset of like, what is there something tangible that you can do that says like, yes, I am deciding to release something from my life. So that's tip number 1, release and purge. Tip number 2 is to find your power. So I know this sounds cliche, but we have Pluto in the mix. And so it's really important this week to take responsibility for yourself and to take responsibility for how you can affect change in your life. And this can be tricky sometimes because Pluto's tricky. It symbolizes a tricky time when it can feel confusing to try and navigate through how it is that you have power over yourself. And so I think this is very individual, but I want you to notice where in your life you would like to have more of a sense of power or control, and how is it that you can do that? How is it that you can really tap into that? And it may be as simple as deciding to say no or yes to something, even though you know it's going to disappoint someone or it's not expected of you. Or it could be listening to a gut feeling that you have. So I want you to do that, number 2, in whatever way works for you, to connect with your power. And then number 3, look at the big picture. This is really important because we're in this whole entire eclipse season. So we have this solar eclipse that's happening on Thursday, but then we also have 2 more eclipses that will happen late July and then early August. And so we're in this whole season of things changing and new awarenesses that are going to happen. So I want you to keep the big picture in mind, and whatever it is that you're doing now, things may continue to evolve and change. I mean, they always do, of course, that's the nature of life, but especially now, like, it's this time of flux with the whole entire eclipse season. So I would say the majority of July and then early August, stay focused on what the big picture of your life is, where you're going, and what's really important to you. Don't let yourself get thrown around by little things that happen that kind of feel like a hiccup or like a hitch in the chain. Stay focused on what it is that's important to you. Okay, so those are your tips. I'm going to pull a tarot card for us to really seal up this energy. I always drop cards when I pull cards for videos. It's so funny. Okay, and it's like a lot usually. Let's see if I can not drop cards today. So this is, I'm gonna pick a card that symbolizes the overall tone for the week and just energy for us to keep in mind, to tap into, to tune into, that's the most helpful. Do one more. Okay. Oh, of course. So I picked the moon. What a perfect card, right? See it there, you can see it better. Okay, so let's talk about the moon in Tarot. So the moon in Tarot, it's associated with the sign of Pisces, which I know sounds weird because it's the moon, you would think Cancer. But in the system of Tarot, it's associated with the sign of Pisces because it's associated with intuition, spiritual connection, but also like the unconscious realms and not really knowing like exactly what is reality all the time, and how sometimes when you go into your unconscious self, things can be confusing. This card is also associated with a certain sense of like fantasy or illusion, or like things not being what they seem. And so that seems very appropriate for this time when, with the eclipse, things are kind of like, things are in flux, and I'm really looking at like these little sun rays, these little sun shoot things that are kind of moving through the sky. Look like little meteors. So what I think is interesting is in this card, the little lobster, he's like crawling out of the water. He's crawling out of the unconscious realm and onto land. And so I see that as a symbol of this is what we're doing during this point in time. And I did pull this card reversed. So that means be extra cautious about like getting caught up in your unconscious realms and patterns and things like that, and the stories that you tell yourself. So definitely an encouragement for lots of reflection this time, and I think that goes along really beautifully with being in the dark phase of the moon earlier in the week. So that is your horoscope for this week. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, please share it with a friend who you think would enjoy it as well. And then if you want to know more about the eclipses, how to tune into the cycles of the moon, you can find out more about that on Neo-Feminine TV. Neo-Feminine TV is a live weekly broadcast that I do to share all different kinds of things with you about astrology, about life, and basically how to live a better life as a highly sensitive person. So I'll have those there. I will not be doing an episode of Neo-Feminine TV this week because it's my birthday and I'm moving this week and it's bananas, but in a good way. So it will not be this week, but I've recorded a whole eclipse episode for you, and then an eclipse on, a whole episode on the lunar cycles and how to work with the moon in a very practical way. So you can find those at neofemininetv.fireside.fm. And if you want to connect with me more, you can find me on Instagram under Neo-Feminine Astrology. And a new thing that I'm doing that I'm really excited about, if you are in the San Diego area, I'm co-hosting an astrology group. It's called Neo-Feminine Astro Gathering, and we're having our first meeting here in July, on Saturday, July 21st. It's at 4 o'clock. And the group is really to help people learn about astrology in an inviting and comfortable environment, so that if you don't know anything about astrology, or you know a little bit and you find it intimidating, you can come and we talk about it, and it's in kind of like this community group circle fashion. So on July 21st, we're going to be talking about the eclipses. So if you're in the San Diego area, would love to see you there. And other things, if you're interested in working with me, I do astrological counseling. You can find more about that on neofemininetv.fireside.com. So I'll have links below to everything in the comments section. Yeah, I think that's all for now. I'm wishing you such a lovely week, sending you lots and lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.